And I think right in this moment, it's really important to note that 27 juniors are aiming for the full diploma. But I think I'm putting you on how many
this year.
How many are?
Spot, Chip.
Yeah, put you on the spot. How many are taking at least one IB course?
Well, that was my next question.
Okay,
You knew
sorry.
I was going to ask that.
So we have, and keep in mind, obviously, that it's only for juniors and seniors.
Right. No, I understand that.
So we have 367 students currently participating in at least one IB class.
Okay.
And I think I'd mentioned previously that college admissions offices love on that transcript to see those two letters IB. So each and every one of those students is going to benefit from that, whether they choose to take the assessments or not. And those 367 students represent 1,008 actual in-class I'm missing
courses that they're
taking. So.
Right.
Now, I keep hearing, and I think somebody even testified at the school board meeting the other night. I know somebody did, but I can't remember what she used as her numbers. But I keep seeing that only about 20% of colleges are giving credit for IB. Do you disagree with that, or do you think that's a valid kind of number?
That is not valid in my experience.
No.
The schools tend to, from what I've heard, through the IB organization, is that it's approximately 95% of schools have a policy to award college credit, and college credit is typically awarded to anyone taking a higher level course that earns a 5. That's typically what you see, but once again, it's not universal. Mm-hmm. And even AP is not quite universal. Not every school is going to offer you credit. Harvard's not going to give you college credit for a 3 on an AP exam. So.
I only looked at a few, and I mean, obviously there's hundreds of colleges, and some of them I saw, like colleges like MIT and so on, were giving basically the same credits for AP as they were for IB, and some of the Ivy Leagues weren't really giving credit for either one of them.
Yeah, they don't tend to give out much credit.
Right.
Just their policy. They want you to take their courses from their teachers who are pretty good.
Yeah, I guess Dartmouth gives only one for both. AP and IP, from what I could find.
But I think too, from anecdotal evidence of alums who have gone through the program, it's been very eye-opening, at least for me as a teacher, about them coming back and sharing their experience of going through the IB program and then finding the successes that they have at the schools that they're part of: UNH, Tufts, Simmons College, Northeastern, Bentley. These schools that are great schools and great achievements for our recent graduates. And the anecdotal evidence that I see of students coming back and just having the right kind of mentality to be successful at those higher level and demanding institutions, it's a great opportunity, I think, for the kids to have that experience.
And the program is designed to be college preparatory. And I keep in contact from time to time with the graduates that have earned their full IB diploma. And for the 2010 graduates, they actually, in their first year at college, earned on average a 3.57 GPA. And they were at some pretty impressive institutions.
Now, do you have any idea how the kids who didn't take IB fared?
Who did not take IB?
Yeah, but did go on to college.
I'll say this. The average college student earns a 3.11. So
okay.
On average, a college student earns that 3.11
okay.
GPA.
Okay. I mean, I have worked my way through all my questions, and I'm sure that you have specific things you want to bring up that I have not touched. I do know that when I talked with Tim for a couple of minutes before we started, he did mention, the overview, that it would be good if you could give an overview, and some of that has already happened just in the course of conversation. And then some of the specifics of the courses. He thought it might be good for people to hear what it's like to be an IB student. And he also mentioned that it might be a good idea, maybe, to talk about the exams. Now, see that clock up there? I'm looking at that because in about 4 minutes, thereabouts, it's not a rocket science thing here, I'm supposed to throw 2 of you out and bring 2 new people in. So I guess now you're sticking around.
I get to stay, so I'm going to be quiet.
You can, yeah, you'll have plenty of chance later.
I'll let these guys talk. So
you two, I mean, obviously you're the coordinator, you're a teacher, so I want you to be able to get out there, especially to those people who are on the fence, who really don't have an opinion one way or another on this. Get across the points you need to get across to them.
Sure. Well, in terms of what classes look like, Andrew, I'll throw that to you, and I'll talk a bit about the assessments when we get there. Maybe you can.
Great. So in my English course, for example, we study a wide range of material. In the first semester, we've studied primarily fairly classic works, Shakespeare. We studied Hamlet and The Tempest this year. And then we followed that up with Jane Eyre, some 3 pretty big hitters. Yeah, it's a fantastic course that I love teaching. Then we balance that out. Some of my students might disagree with that term, but we balance it out with a lot of poetry. We're reading 2 modern poets, Elizabeth Jennings and a poet named Wisława Szymborska, who's a Nobel Prize winning poet. And then we also are reading Percy Shelley, John Keats, and a poet named Christina Rossetti. All of those texts are available in terms of our syllabi that we put out to parents, so that everyone is aware of that. And we also have all those available on our list through our school website.
And as I had mentioned previously, the program is really geared towards college prep. And in so, they're trying to develop the skills in the students. And one of the things that I find most valuable to the program is that each class, no matter which class it is, has some part where they're going to be graded by their classroom teacher that works towards a skill that is then going to become part of the grade that they earn at the end of the coursework. So it's not just sort of one test on one day, and Andrew can speak to this more specifically for his English course. They really have to show off some impressive skill.
So over the course of 2 years, students will complete 6 formal assessments that contribute to their IB score for English. So if you're an IB certificate student in English or an IB diploma student in English, over the course of 2 years you're going to be doing a formal presentation that will be graded by the classroom teacher here in Bedford.
And that would be to you if you were my teacher?
Exactly.
Okay.
You also complete what's called an oral commentary, where you are going to be, you get a passage of something that you have studied out of, say, Jane Eyre, and you have to do a commentary of you sitting down and doing analysis of that in front of me, and I grade that as the classroom teacher.
Would I know in advance, or you would just spring it on me?
You would have read the text in advance.
Yes, but I wouldn't know
the whole
which
book.
one.
You would not
I wouldn't know
necessarily
which one. Okay, so I have to read the whole thing.
Exactly. we make some good choices there,
I'm just checking.
Following that, there's also 2 independent papers. Those independent papers are sent out to be moderated by an external examiner. And then you have 2 two-hour essays that you write at the end of the year, during the end of their senior year.
And we have some
examples
to
questions,
show
sure.
some folks.
Now, those essays, are they written at home, or are they written in an exam situation?
They are written in an exam situation, and so one of the things that, much like an AP exam, much like kneecaps, much like ACTs, so students will have a fairly broad, open-ended question. The example that we have is, poems are meant to be heard, not just seen. Compare how the poems of 2 poets you have studied appeal to the ear. And so students would take that question. Students will take that question, and they will need to answer it using the material that they've studied in the course. And so there's a very strong tie between the assessment that they face at the end of the year and the material that they actually study in the course. That's also paired with another written exam where they are responding to 1 of 2 unseen passages. So they will hand you a test booklet, and it will say, please write a commentary on one of the following. And on one side there's a piece of prose. It could be a selection of a novel. It could be nonfiction. And then on the other side there's a poem. And students get to choose between one of those 2. And one of the greatest things I think about these assessments is that it always offers students choices. And so while I read that one example out, there will be maybe 3 that you get to choose from, 3 to 5 that you get to choose from, and answer using material that you studied. And so one of the things that...
now, what's the rationale of giving them the choice?
Well, I think it wants to play to the strength of the student. So a student, one particular student may really be engaged with this particular question of poems are meant to be heard, not just seen. But another student will be more engaged with something about ambiguity in a poem. and how that works.
Okay.
And so you get options so that the student feels confident about what they're writing.
And what I apologize, what I was about to say was options are really the driving factor behind all of the assessments. So we talked a little bit about the English exams, but we can also talk about the history exams. The first test that they take, they're provided a bunch of resources and they have to sort of compare and contrast. The second exam, they're provided 30 options to write about just a small number. It's 2 essays out of those 30 options. And hopefully, something that they've studied throughout their coursework in their history classes has sort of grabbed them, and they'll certainly be able to speak eloquently to one of those options that they've been provided with.
Okay.
We have a couple of examples. So 2 questions that were asked recently. One was to assess the successes and failures of policies of either Kennedy or Nixon as the President of the United States.
I'd have to do what they heard at home from Mom and Dad.
That's right. That is correct.
And they could.
Yeah, really.
And another example is to compare and contrast the effects of peace between 2 countries in the 1950s and 1960s. So very open-ended.
Okay.
They're not telling them which countries to talk about. They're not necessarily saying, they're not trying to influence their views. They're trying to sort of see what the student believes.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And last but not least, the bio exam, I think, is another a nice example of options. There's 3 parts to this test, and not to mention the fact that their lab work that they've done in the class has already become a part of their grade that they'll earn, which is very unique. My students in my science IB class actually have to design their own experiments, perform them, and write up their own lab work at the end. It's a great challenge. It really, I think, captures what it is to be a scientist. And you've got 3 culminating exams that you take at the end of the year, or at the end, I should say, at the end of 2 years of study. And the first one is a multiple choice exam, no different than what you would expect from any other exam. The second portion, or the second test that you take, is short answers and analyzing graphs. There's a great emphasis on the analysis of graphical information. And I think you can see an example of one of the short answer questions. So it's not really anything that nothing that's unexpected. Diagrams of leaves and trying to explain what the leaf parts are. And last but not least, the third exam once again provides tremendous options. So you've got 4 different series of essays that you can respond to. The example here that I have is draw and label a diagram of the digestive system. Then building upon that, once you've done that, many people cannot digest lactose, explain that process, and then finally explaining how the kidney can help retain useful substances in the blood. So really getting into great detail, but staying open-ended enough where it's not pointed.
All right. Well, I have totally enjoyed talking with you, and I wish this set was bigger so that everybody could be on at the same time. But I'm looking at the clock, and I think if we don't get the boss on, well, we're all in trouble. Because the boss is coming on next, the boss of the world, right?
Our world.
Yes.
Yes.
Bring on the boss.
But listen, I thank you so much.
Thank you. Nice to meet you.
I'm sure we'll talk again.
Absolutely.
Because I don't think this issue will go away anytime soon, regardless of what happens with the legislation.
Well, thank you for having us.
Oh, I'm delighted to have you. And
Appreciate
thank you.
it. Thank you
Thank you
very
for
much.
coming, too. And we'll take a short break while we switch people. And I didn't shake your hand because you're sticking around.
That's right.
Okay, we'll be right back.